New Age Activists, Tape 1, Side A. Sharing. How to respond to non-believers. Hello, I'm Dick Sutphin, President of Reincarnationists Incorporated, and New Age Activists is a spiritual action group of reincarnationists. Our goal is to manifest the New Age dream of peaceful planetary transformation. Our agenda is threefold. 1. To share New Age metaphysical awareness. And 2. To alert others of efforts to destroy the New Age movement. And 3. To network New Agers for support programs that would benefit us all. Reincarnationists is a non-profit, tax-exempt educational organization created for mass communication of the liberating, self-responsible concepts of reincarnation and karma. It is a philosophy religion of self that you don't join, you live. The question New Age activists is asking is what happened to the dream? Progress in civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights, social programs, arms control, and environmental protection. They grew out of the turmoil of the 60s and 70s, and New Age awareness was a profound influence, and the dream of peaceful planetary transformation was becoming a reality. But today, our dream is being dismantled by the forces of ignorance and intolerance. And destiny now presents us with a karmic test, and if we have forgotten the past, we condemn ourselves to repeat it. I contend it's time for all New Agers to get involved and return to the passion and idealism we once knew. So today, I am seeking the support of New Agers everywhere, regardless of their spiritual loyalties. To bring about positive change, we must use positive action. When we stop questioning and speaking out against the things we feel strongly about, we give permission for our rights to be taken away. And to generate positive change, we need large numbers of people. Large numbers of supportive New Agers is the only way our response will be meaningful. And it won't be enough to bring in a percentage of the existing New Agers. We need to find new people who are responsive to our cause. There are millions of people who are on the verge of accepting metaphysical ideas, especially reincarnation. They are looking for answers, and if you have the right answers for them, they just might open to further investigation, to reading books or attending a metaphysical gathering. So what I am going to do on this tape is answer the most often asked questions about reincarnation and karma. And these questions will often be the more difficult ones, the ones asked by the radio or TV talk show host who tries to create an interesting show by talking his guest into a corner and watching him squirm. Now here's the first question I'm often hit with on talk shows. Come on now, Richard, do you really believe in reincarnation? And this is how I usually respond. No. Belief is something you don't know for sure. I accept reincarnation as my philosophical basis of reality as a result of my experience and as a result of years of study and investigating case histories, as a result of past life regressions, and especially as a result of understanding that reincarnation and karma are the only religion or philosophy that explains all the injustice and inequality in the world. It is the only one that makes logical sense. So, I'm coming from my experience, not my belief. I've experienced this, and you can too. And now, the next question might be, so then you absolutely accept that you have lived before as another person in another life? Now, here's my answer. No, I didn't say that. I said I accept reincarnation as my philosophical basis of reality. After 19 years of research on this subject, there is no way that I can prove that I've lived before. No matter how accurate the hypnotic past life regression proves to be, there are always other explanations. What my own research, and that of many other investigators, has proven is that each and every one of us has past life memories locked away in his subconscious mind. In my case, I'm basing that on working with over 50,000 people in group regressions and hundreds of individuals in individual directed regressions. We all have subconscious memories of other times and other places. What is important is that these memories are affecting us today. That's why past life therapy is proven to be so effective as an alternative methodology for resolving personal problems. Okay, now here is the next logical question. Well, obviously, if you accept that we all have past life memories locked away in our unconscious mind, the only way they could have gotten there is through reincarnation, right? And here's my answer. Yes, through reincarnation. But I still don't know exactly what that means. There are several complicated metaphysical concepts that might offer alternate ways to view reincarnation. What I do know is that we all have these memories of other lifetimes. And I know that energy can't die. Any student of physics could give a talk on the fact that we are energy. And the physicists have proven again and again that energy can't die. If, as an example now, the smallest molecule of energy is isolated in a sealed cloud chamber, it cannot get out, and now nothing else can get in. Of course, a molecule is too small to be seen by the naked eye, but it can be monitored on ultra-high sensitive film. And what the researchers have found is that the molecule will move within the chamber. It will have a particular size, weight, pattern, and speed. But eventually it falls to the bottom of the chamber, appearing to have died. And yet when the camera is left on, pretty soon the molecule is back, only it has changed. It has a new size, a new weight, a new pattern, and a new speed. And this goes on and on indefinitely. Energy can't die, and you are energy. You can't die. All right, and now another question. Richard, you said that reincarnation is the only philosophy that explains injustice and inequality in the world. It is the only one that makes logical sense. Now come on, isn't that going a bit far? Now here's my answer. No, it isn't. I've studied philosophy and religion all my life, and the only logical explanation is reincarnation and karma. And I might add that over 2/3 of the world accepts reincarnation and karma as part of their religion, although reincarnation and karma are just about the only things these religions have in common. Now, I don't see reincarnation as a religion, but there is no doubt it is the predominant world belief. This isn't true of the United States, but the Harris poll shows that 1 out of every 4 people in the country now accepts reincarnation as what is. But let me get back to karma and why it is logical. First, I contend that karma is the supreme universal law. It is the very basis of our reality. And I contend that karma either is or isn't. There is no halfway. This is either a random universe, and we just accidentally evolved out of the sea to our present evolutionary position, or there is meaning to life. In other words, there is a plan of some kind. And if there is a plan, then justice would be part of it. But look around you. Where is there justification for the misery and inequality? How can you justify child abuse and starvation and victims of crimes and people ripping other people off and seemingly being rewarded for doing so? Karma can explain it all. Christianity certainly can't. Since the Christians edited most of the references to reincarnation out of the Bible, the only explanation they can offer for the inequality is, you'll find your reward in heaven. Or they will tell you not to question the workings of God. Jerry Falwell tells you, and this is a quote, "Good Christians, like slaves and soldiers, ask no questions." Karma rewards and punishes. It is a multi-life debit and credit system that offers total justice. It even explains a seemingly senseless murder, as Gibran said in The Prophet, "The murdered is as guilty as the murderer." In other words, the person who was murdered probably murdered someone else in a previous lifetime. His murder in this life is a balancing of karma. So, karma either is or it isn't. There can be no halfway karma, no halfway justice. Absolutely everything is karmic, or nothing. And if nothing is karmic, then there is no meaning to life. Karma is cause and effect, and everything you do creates or erases karma. What you think or do creates vibrations that flow out and back through your lifetimes until your karma is balanced. Everything you think, feel, and do creates or erases karma. And this includes the motive, intent, and desire behind every thought and action. The unerring law of karma is always adjusting and balancing as a result of our free choices. Our free choices in regard to how we think and feel, or free choice in regard to our motive, our intent, and our desire. Our free choices in how we respond to every situation. It is all cause and effect, and every condition in our lives is a result of karma we have generated up until this very moment. So, you and you alone are responsible for everything that has ever happened to you. You are your own judge and your own jury, and there is no one to blame for anything. Every situation, large or small, is a karmic test that you have set up for yourself to experience. Now, how you handle a situation will indicate if you have learned your karmic lessons or not. If you respond with negativity, blame, and anger, you've probably failed your own test and will have to experience a similar situation in the future, in this life, or in a future life. If you respond to the situation with neutrality, or love, or compassion, or positive thoughts, you probably passed your own test and you won't have to encounter a similar situation in the future. Positive and loving thoughts and actions will create harmony in your future, and negative, fear-based thoughts and actions will create disharmony. From the perspective of karma, unhappiness and failure are self-inflicted, and happiness and success are self-bestowed. So the person who is ripping off others will pay the price in the future, in this life or in a future life. The thief will experience being stolen from. Those who are cruel will experience cruelty. Even in a negative relationship, if one person learns and responds with neutrality or compassion, and the other person responds with negativity, the person who has learned will be free of similar future burdens. The person who didn't learn will be combined with someone else who has a karmic configuration or need similar to their own. Karma offers total justice. And I know this is difficult to comprehend in this limited amount of time, but with a little investigation and reading, it will become perfectly clear. Okay, here is another question. Often the first question asked by a radio talk show host who doesn't accept reincarnation and wants to get me quickly. Here's the question. There are presently more people living on the earth than the sum total of all the people who have ever lived. Certainly that disproves reincarnation, because there wouldn't be enough past lives to go around. And now here's my response. First, your statement is incorrect. As was reported in most newspapers in 1985, throughout the recorded history of man, there have been far more people who have lived than are currently living today. Also, those figures do not include large, advanced civilizations such as Atlantis and Lemuria. But even if that were not the case, there are probably many souls experiencing their first incarnation, probably in the more primitive societies. There have never been any shortage of souls, only of bodies for the souls to inhabit. I also now accept the concept of parallel lives, based upon my own experiences with my own separate self and hundreds of case histories in working with other people in seminars. Jane Roberts indicated in her books that Seth also accepted and related this idea. It amounts to the fact that you are capable of living several physical lives at the same time. You are not consciously aware of this, but superconsciously you are in communication with your other parallel selves. I wrote a great deal about this in 2 of my books published by Simon & Schuster Pocket Books. You Were Born Again to Be Together introduces the idea, and the book Past Lives, Future Loves carries it out so that everyone can easily understand. All right, now here's another question. I'm often asked if I think the acceptance of reincarnation is compatible with Christianity. And my answer is, of course it is. It is only the born-again fundamentalists who have a problem in this area. Many of the leaders in the metaphysical New Age movement still consider themselves Christians. Edgar Cayce was one of the greatest psychics of all time, and he was also a dedicated Christian. Okay, now the next question is obvious. Then why isn't there any reference to reincarnation in the Christian Bible? And in response, let me say, I think there are many references to reincarnation in the Bible. This isn't important to me, but I realize it is to many. But before we explore that, let's go back and look at the Bible. Some of the books of the Old Testament were compiled no earlier than the 7th and 8th centuries B.C. Jesus' teachings were not written down in his lifetime, but were handed down verbally from disciple to disciple. Many of the New Testament writings were made in the 2nd and 3rd centuries after the birth of Christ. In tracing the origin of the Bible as a book, you have to go back to 325 A.D. when Constantine the Great called the First Council of Nicaea, composed of 300 religious leaders. This council was given the task of separating divinely inspired writings from those of questionable origin. Now that is 300 years after Jesus lived. How would you like to accurately establish what someone living in the mid-1600s had to say? The actual compilation of the Bible was an incredibly complicated project that involved churchmen of many varying beliefs and in an atmosphere of dissension, jealousy, intolerance, persecution, and bigotry. At this time, the question of the divinity of Jesus had split the church into 2 factions. Constantine offered to make the little-known Christian sect into the official state religion if the Christians would settle their differences. Apparently, he didn't particularly care what they believed in as long as they agreed upon a belief. By combining a book of sacred writings, Constantine calculated that the book would give authority to the new church. It is a matter of historic record that only after much hostility and bitterness at the Council of Nicaea was Jesus declared to be the essence of the Father. The idea that reincarnation was once a belief in the Old Testament books is undoubted, for in the year 533, during the Second Council of Constantinople, the Church adopted a decree that stated, "Whosoever shall support the mythical doctrine of the pre-existence of the soul and the subsequent wonderful opinion of its return, let him be anathema." Now nothing can be canceled out by official decree unless its existence is being acknowledged in the first place. Some people feel that reincarnation was removed from the Bible because it allows people to postpone, not only until tomorrow, but until their next life. They decided it was better to tell people, there is only one life, and this is your only chance to get to heaven. If you miss it this time, you go to hell. Thus, it was much easier to control the masses. Anyway, let's get back to the references to reincarnation that did manage to squeak through the original assembly and many editings that have taken place over the centuries. If you're interested enough to look up these references, I'm sure you'll agree they relate to reincarnation. Okay, try Matthew 11:13 through 15, Matthew 17:10 through 13, and Revelation 3:12. There are many other references, and a lot of books go into this in much more detail. Okay, let's move on to another question, or rather a statement I've often heard from those who don't accept reincarnation. They will say, I can't imagine any intelligent person believing in reincarnation. And I respond by saying that I can't imagine an intelligent person not accepting reincarnation. In fact, some of the most intelligent and talented people in our history have publicly proclaimed their acceptance. And to name a few, Charles Darwin, Richard Wagner, Henry David Thoreau, Herman Melville, Confucius, Plato, John Webster, Henry Moore, Voltaire, Benjamin Franklin, Beethoven, Immanuel Kant, William Blake, William Wordsworth, Victor Hugo, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Edgar Allan Poe, Leo Tolstoy, Mark Twain, George Bernard Shaw, Rudolf Steiner, Henry Ford, William Butler Yeats, Jack London, H.G. Wells, James Joyce, Cahill Gibran, D.H. Lawrence, Eugene O'Neill, Henry Miller, Salvador Dali, and of course thousands of world-famous contemporary personalities from country singer Willie Nelson to actors Dennis Weaver, Barbara Eden, and Shirley MacLaine. All right, next question. What about the idea that people come back as animals? My response to that is in all of the thousands of cases I am familiar with or have explored myself, I have never come across a single piece of evidence to support the theory of transmigration. People do not come back as animals. Next question, or statement, and this is often posed by the fundamentalist Christians. Reincarnation teaches that suffering is the only real purpose in life. And my response? That's ridiculous. Reincarnation teaches that the purpose of life is to learn and test yourself to see if you have truly learned on every level of your body and mind. The true purpose of life is, through this learning, to let go of fear and to learn to express unconditional love. Now that sounds like two things, but it is actually one thing. For as you learn to let go of all the negative fear-based emotions, such as jealousy, selfishness, guilt, hate, envy, anger, greed, possessiveness, desire for revenge, and the need to control, as you learn to let go of these emotions, you automatically open to the easy expression of unconditional love. Next question. If we have lived before, why do we forget our past lives? And the answer is simple. Most of us have enough trouble dealing with our current life and all the complications that it entails. To handle the present and also consciously remember all the past would be too overpowering for us to cope with. We have chosen this amnesia, but hopefully we have carried with us intuitive awareness of what is right and wrong, so we don't make the same mistakes we've made in the past or in past lives. Next question. Wouldn't the idea of genetic memory explain why we can recall past lives in hypnotic regression? And my response? No, although I don't totally discount genetic memory. If you were white now and you regress to a past life as a black man, that seems to discount genetic memory. Inherited qualities or characteristics are another aspect of this question. Two artistic parents might have an artistic child. That doesn't necessarily mean that the child actually inherited the qualities. It means that those parents would probably attract an artistic soul to be born through them. This explains physical defects as well as attributes. We choose our parents because of our ties and the karmic configurations offered through this union. Next, and a very important question, how would the world be a better place if everyone accepted reincarnation and karma as their philosophical basis of reality? All right, now let me answer by saying that a high percentage of the world already accepts the concepts of reincarnation and karma. But it is easy to say you accept these ideas. Many who profess this belief don't fully comprehend what it means. Or if they do, they are so hampered by the other aspects of religious dogma that they can't fully incorporate the concept of karma into their lives. The acceptance of reincarnation and karma means the total acceptance of self-responsibility. There is no one to blame for anything, for all is as it should be for you. That doesn't mean you can't change it. The law of grace supersedes the law of karma, and wisdom erases karma. You always have the ability to create your own reality. But just think what it would mean if everyone accepted self-responsibility. That in itself would transform the planet. And if everyone accepted karma, they would understand cause and effect in the law of attraction. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. You attract what you are and that which you concentrate upon. If you are negative, you draw in and experience negativity. If you are loving, you draw in and experience love. You can attract to you only the qualities you possess and exhibit. So, if you want peace and harmony in your life, you must become peaceful and harmonious. And something else. Those who accept karma will be far more likely to live by the golden rule, for they know that what you do to someone else will come back to you at some time in the future. A reincarnationist seeks to rise above judgment of other human beings. He knows that everyone is doing the best they can, although maybe not the best they know how. Sometimes, as with the case of the radical New Christian right, we have to speak up about what we believe and use the democratic process to protect our own rights. But that doesn't mean that we have to judge the extremists except as being misguided in regard to our own needs. A reincarnationist also detaches from his illusions about reality and recognizes that it exists only as that which he experiences. It can be experienced as a hostile separateness or a tranquil oneness. And a reincarnationist knows that there is nothing to seek and nothing to find. You are already enlightened, and all the words in the world will not give you what you already have. The wise seeker, therefore, is concerned with one thing only, to become aware of what he already is, of the true self within. New Age Activists, Tape 1, Side B. Alerting to the Tyranny of the New Christian Right. As New Agers, we share general awareness as opposed to common dogma. We are a loose network of like-minded people opposed to an organization of zealots. Because that's what is. New Agers are best at infiltrating society, and the New Christian Right is best at organized political manipulations. The New Christian Right, which I'll call the NCR on the rest of this tape, is also called the Radical Christian Right or the Fundamentalist Movement. Whatever you call it, it represents an agenda based upon the narrow theology of television evangelist Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Swaggart, Pat Robertson, Jim Baker, James Robson, Tim LaHaye, and others of their ilk. They have taken control of the Republican Party, and one of their primary goals is to pass laws to destroy the New Age movement in general, and metaphysical and holistic practices in particular. And as I begin this discourse, I want to point out that Reincarnationists Incorporated and New Age activists, as a spiritual action group of reincarnationists, are not interested in politics, nor are we attempting to influence politics. Our issue is with a fundamentalist religious faction that makes no bones about wanting to block our right to exist, because they see metaphysical beliefs and holistic practices as satanic. These fanatical super-Christians have been unsuccessful in attaining their goals through their propaganda and the conversion process. So, they are now also concentrating their efforts on attaining political power. It follows that this will enable them to change the laws. So, when politics are mentioned on this tape, it is in regard to one of several approaches these people are using to attain their goals. Although we encourage everyone to vote, we do not endorse any political party or candidates. As president of Reincarnationists, I also want to point out that in response to the New Christian Right, the NCR, I advocate that we respond gently but firmly in keeping with our awareness. There is no need of malice, animosity, or excessive emotionalism in our response. To bring about positive change, we must use positive action. But when we stop questioning and speaking out against the things we feel strongly about, we give permission for our rights to be taken away. There is a metaphysical axiom that says, you can't change what you don't recognize. And all too many good people don't recognize what is happening, and that is why I'm speaking out. Those who would oppress everything New Age would like nothing better than for us to remain quiet, apathetic, and indifferent. But look at history, and you'll find that indifference and apathy have never worked in response to oppression. Anyone who knows anything about mass movements knows that for one to be very successful it must have a devil, just as Hitler's devil was the Jews. The NCR has Satan, but he isn't enough to get the people excited anymore, so they've created several new devils, including the New Age. The New Age areas most commonly condemned as satanic are grouped under the heading of occult, belief in reincarnation, astrology, yoga, meditation, and all Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Zen, and so on. Detroit lawyer and author Constant Cumby has written a book that has become a born-again Christian bestseller. It's called The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, and it's the most distorted logic you will ever read. But she claims the New Age movement is taking us back to an age of barbarism, and as typical examples of satanic thinking, she presents Unity and Diversity's Pledge of Responsibility and Challenge, and World Goodwill's Great Invocations. Now, so that you'll understand the thinking, let me read these. Unity and Diversity's Pledge of Responsibility and Challenge, and there are several points, and they are: to affirm the oneness of all life which is beyond name and form, to advance human fellowship through mutual trust, understanding, and respect, to seek the truth in the spirit of love, to integrate reason and faith, science and religion, to ensure that all aspects of life be kept in dynamic balance for maximum health and well-being, to respect the teachings of the prophets and the sages of all times and cultures, to build with joy a new civilization of freedom, justice, and peace founded on reverence for life. Okay, does that sound satanic to you? I think it's beautiful and representative of what the New Age can and will be. Okay, now here's another example of supposedly satanic thinking. It's known to millions as the Great Invocation, and I'm going to read it now. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Again, how beautiful. But author Cumby lists me in the books as one of the 3 planned propaganda efforts targeting the NCR, because I have reprinted quotes by fanatical television evangelists and I've expressed my opinion on their activities. The other 2 planned propaganda efforts, according to Cumby, are Humanist Magazine and television producer Norman Lear and his organization, People for the American Way. Cumby also lists the Sutphin Corporation as one of the 8 most important links in the New Age network. I've also been listed recently in another new book, which is being highly promoted by its publisher. It's called The Seduction of Christianity, and the title is as misleading as the rest of the radical Christian publications in wide circulation. Not only are the books read by hundreds of thousands of zealots, but the authors make the rounds of the born-again Christian television shows, and they agitate the believers all the more. Now, other new 1985 and 1986 books attacking the New Age are Out on a Broken Limb, which goes after Shirley MacLaine for her writings in the best-selling Out on a Limb. Another is Unmasking the New Age. It even warns of Fortune 500 corporations who send their managers to New Age seminars. Gods of the New Age is another book, and it claims that there is an unparalleled mystical conspiracy threatening today's world. The author says that the West has been invaded by the East, and every Christian must be equipped to meet the onslaught of Eastern thought. Another book, A Planned Deception. It's a title supposedly proving that there is a conscious conspiracy afoot to stage the coming of a new Messiah, and that New Age actors are waiting in the wings, ready for the curtains to rise. Now, as New Agers, we could laugh off these books as pathetic propaganda if it were not for the fact that the born-again Christians believe them. Not only do they believe them, the books are part of a planned effort to get fundamentalists to contribute millions of dollars to work against everything we believe in. Naturally, to these authors, everything psychic and metaphysical is satanic. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. They go on to condemn all holistic practitioners, vegetarian restaurants, positive and possibility thinking, self-help philosophies, and much, much more. In addition to their desire to pass laws to eliminate the entire New Age movement, these born-again Christians are hard at work changing a lot of other things you and I care about. It is now estimated that there are up to 40 million born-again super Christians in this country, and we know they respond to the call of their local and television ministers to get out to the polls and vote. They are incredibly organized, and although they comprise only 1/6 of the population, it is often enough to elect their own people. Why? Because of apathy. From 49% to 51% of the eligible population is all that usually votes in a general election. Dr. Benjamin Spock points out that the polls indicate over 70% of the people in this country want an end to the arms race. They are against nuclear proliferation, but they don't get involved enough to vote to make the difference. Maybe civilization appears to be so out of control that no one believes they can actually make a difference. We are intimidated by the power structure, and it's easy to rationalize indifference. But the NCR isn't apathetic. They are zealots, determined to tell the rest of us how to live. But I contend that you and I can make a difference. Listen to the news, read the newspaper, or look at a history book. Change starts with individuals, and we can each do a part in making a difference. You can take bold steps, which will result in high visibility, or you can quietly plant the seeds of awareness with those in your own personal circle. Of all the current efforts of the new Christian right, the most dangerous for us as New Agers, metaphysicians, and holistic practitioners is the right's effort to plant their candidates in every level of public office, and especially their efforts to target for defeat all who do not agree with their restrictive theology. A loophole in the 1976 Supreme Court ruling permits unlimited campaign expenditures by groups not officially connected with a candidate. The result is numerous political action committees called PACs, which have been initiated by the new Christian right, the NCR. They appear to have limitless amounts of funding and have formalized attack campaigns against all who support the New Age or civil rights or civil liberties, women's rights, environmental protection, arms control, and social programs. It is an easily substantiated fact that the NCR is unconcerned with the truth in their campaigns. In fact, they reflect Hitler's propaganda concepts outlined in his book Mein Kampf. Hitler said, "Success is the sole earthly judge of right or wrong." After 24 years in political office, a United States Senator from Idaho was defeated by a massive new Christian right political action committee campaign. The Idaho newspapers called the attacks cheap and deceitful, but he lost. Ex-Senator Frank Church is not against religious leaders getting involved in politics. However, he feels the fundamentalists have crossed a line that hasn't been breached before, and I quote him. "The difference is that the fundamentalist ministers of the right are absolutists. They believe that they possess the ultimate truth, which has been revealed through the Bible, and that their interpretation of Scriptures constitutes the irrefutable will of God. Now, you can say that the Catholic Church or other churches believe that their doctrine or creed is the ultimate truth. But until now, even absolutist churches have confined their doctrine to the salvation of the soul for those who believe, and that doesn't trespass on others. Such authority rests on the belief that you either adhere to their creeds and thus win eternal salvation, or you don't and are damned to eternal condemnation. The fundamentalist right is going beyond, seeking to change the laws of the country to conform to their religious beliefs so that everyone must comply under penalty of punishment. They are exhibiting a kind of fanaticism that leaves no room for those who may disagree, for non-believers, for Jews and other minorities in this country who may not be practicing Christians. They are not satisfied to have their go in the arena of the democratic process where you win or lose, but you do so with a certain grace and with a certain respect for the motivation of those who may disagree with you. Their bigotry and intolerance towards those who disagree is extreme. They see themselves as a great force of the future, destined to dominate the whole political, economic, social, and religious agenda for this country and perhaps the world. Now, Congressman Mike Sinar, Democrat from Oklahoma, was attacked by the PACs in 1980 and 1982, but he fought back hard and he won. According to Sinar, and I quote him now, "Never before have we had such massive amounts of money combined with precision targeting. If enough people surrender, if enough people give up, you're going to see a change in the focus of this country that may take generations to recover from. We are heading towards a point where reason, compassion, and understanding will no longer be the order of the day. It will be emotion and deception, fear and lies. It's up to the American people to decide whether they will accept that type of politics. The NCR also wants to dictate what we can read as they continually demonstrate enforcing textbook editings, book burnings, and campaigns to remove publications that they dislike from retail outlets. Last year, there were efforts to ban books in schools in 46 of the 50 states, including California. Many of these efforts succeeded, and target titles include books such as Catcher in the Rye, Of Mice and Men, Huckleberry Finn, and The Diary of Anne Frank. The NCR is also determined to dictate what our children learn in the classroom, as they continually demonstrate by attempting to pass laws and by filing lawsuits to eliminate classroom discussion of many subjects, including the nuclear war debate, career options for women, sex education, values clarification, open classroom discussion, evolution, drug and alcohol prevention. Most NCR leaders have a real problem with our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Supreme Court, which is responsible for the laws of our land. One of the key leaders of the NCR makes my point far better than I could. TV evangelist Pat Robertson of CBN's 700 Club will probably run for President of the United States. And in a June 27, 1986 interview with the Washington Post, Robertson said, "A Supreme Court ruling is not the law of the United States." And he went on to talk about the Constitution, saying it is, and I quote, "a marvelous document for self-government by Christian people, but the minute you turn the document into the hands of non-Christian people and atheist people, they use it to destroy the very foundations of our society. And that's what's been happening." Can you imagine a president unwilling to uphold the laws of our country? And weakening the Bill of Rights is another goal of the NCR, for in so doing, they can accomplish many things, including an opportunity to legislate the New Age out of existence. All you have to do is to read the daily newspapers to realize how actively the NCR is pursuing this goal. Under the guise of giving rights back to the individual states, their thinking is to declare, 1, that guaranteed freedoms included in the Bill of Rights are a federal matter and do not apply to state or local entities, and 2, that no federal court could ever review a case dealing with any state or local issue. Now that gives the ultra-conservatives the opportunity to reshape America their way. They could discriminate, censor, and favor at their discretion. Southern states could go back to segregation. Maybe other states could outlaw the women's movement, or medical abortions, or maybe they could imprison gays. Metaphysical practices could be outlawed in any state with enough fundamentalists voting to allow only approved Christian churches. As the most vocal member of the NCR, Jerry Falwell says, and I quote him, "Our founding fathers would not accept the tyranny of a democracy because they recognized that the only sovereign over men and nations was Almighty God." Here's another quote I like. It's from television evangelist Reverend Charles Stanley, and he says, "We do not want a democracy in this land because if we have a democracy, a majority rules." If the NCR doesn't want a democracy with the protection of civil rights, what do they want? Obviously, they want to dictate. The NCR wants a dictatorship combined with our present system of private ownership. And that system has a name. It's called fascism, as in Hitler's Germany. Because they are a minority, they know a dictatorship is the only way to fully accomplish their agenda. James Robson, one of the NCR's key leaders, says, and I quote him, "If necessary, God would raise up a tyrant, a man who might not have the best ethics, to protect the freedom interests of the ethical and the godly." In other words, a Christian tyrant. Can you imagine Jerry Falwell as Fuhrer of the United States? When I first started speaking out against these people in 1982, I was called an alarmist. Since then, they have gained power I wouldn't have believed possible 4 years ago. The 20th century has seen fascism emerge all over the globe: Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Hungary, Romania, Japan, Latin America, and elsewhere. We are not so much more aware today that it couldn't happen here. In fact, the movement has already begun. If fascism comes to America, it would be on a program of Americanism, said Huey P. Long. Now, how does it happen? In Germany, it began with deep moral depression and confusion. The support of the NCR comes from people who sincerely believe the morals of this country have been destroyed. To them, the most blatant examples are homosexuality and pornography and the current school curriculum and publication of what they call wrong-thinking books. And they see metaphysical and occult expressions as symptoms. And they see separation of church and state in the form of block school prayer, and they see legalized abortion and violence on TV and women's demands for equal rights. And according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, fascist movements, wherever they have arisen, have frequently been inspired by national feelings of disappointment and by the assumed need to close ranks in order to reach fantastic goals. The supporters of the NCR are disappointed and confused by our changing world. They seek to retreat into what they believe was a simpler, purer time. They are convinced that the only way to do this is by changing the laws. They are also convinced that the Constitution and Bill of Rights are major blocks to achieving their desires. So what about closing ranks to reach their goals? The April 12, 1986 issue of Congressional Quarter Weekly Report relates a very disturbing report on the GOP power struggle. It appears that the Republicans have created a monster. The NCR has used the Republicans to gain power, and they have organized to such a degree that they are now starting to kick the old guard Republicans out if they are not born-again Christians. Often the NCR can't openly endorse and support a political candidate. So they provide money, and they keep their participation quiet. As Jerry Falwell says, and I quote him, "Where high-profile participation hurts a candidate, we have to work undercover and accomplish our goals without putting baggage on a person we want to support. We've learned to do that." All right, let's move on. People calling me an alarmist say, "It couldn't happen here. We have too many laws to protect us from this sort of thing. The people would resist." I hear these statements over and over again in response to the concerns I voice. And my response is, oh yes it can. It can happen here. And here is exactly how they will do it unless they are stopped. First, the NCR will attain additional political power and put as many born-agains as they can into every political office of every branch of government at every level, local, state, and federal. Next, the NCR will then be in a position to begin changing the laws. And historically good people have not resisted a fascist takeover until it was too late. Next, the actual takeover will come as a result of crisis. And again, to make my point, let me quote the Encyclopedia Britannica in regard to Hitler's masterfully manipulated takeover in which he combined the moral depression and confusion with hatred, of course, of the Jews, and he combined it with crisis. According to the Encyclopedia, fascism would probably not have come to power had it not been for the inflation crisis of 1923 and the widespread unemployment of the early 1930s. So, what kind of crisis are we talking about? Michael Harrington, in a May 3, 1986 article in The Nation, says this: "I have no idea which of the many time bombs ticking away in the U.S. economy will explode. The internal debt, the international debt, underconsumption by working people leading to overproduction, or the shattering of the yuppie myth when it turns out that there simply aren't enough lucrative jobs for the hyper-expectations of the baby boomers. I am convinced that the tumultuous structural changes of our times, the dramatic redefinition of the global division of labor, the technological revolution, and the internationalization of capital, as well as the old-fashioned business cycle, will bring the Reagan house of cards down around the nation's ears. Okay. Whatever the crisis, martial law will be declared, and the U.S. Army and the National Guard will be mobilized for the protection of the people. Normal government functions will be temporarily suspended, and during the crisis period, the NCR will solidify control and the temporary suspension will become permanent. And a fascist state always eliminates the opposition. The opposition can be burned at the stake, or exterminated, as in the Nazi death camps, or simply run out of the country. And among the first to go would be liberal leadership, New Age practitioners, homosexuals, who were estimated at over 40 million. And this pattern would continue until only those willing to accept born-again Christianity would survive. Remember what Martin Niemöller said about fascism, and I quote him. In Germany, they came first for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I was a Protestant. And then they came for me, and by that time, nobody was left to speak. The NCR has just laughed about the media claim that they want to establish a theocracy, a government of officials regarded as divinely inspired. There is no doubt that they would vehemently deny the idea that they desire a fascist state. But in closing, here's a quote by Adolf Hitler. At the Nazi Congress of 1935, he said, "National Socialism does not harbor the slightest aggressive intent toward any European nation." All right, that's it for this communication. You have a very condensed look at the situation, and I invite you to learn more, to get involved with us. Jerry Falwell says, "It isn't a matter of if I win, only when." Let's not let that happen. We'd like to send you a free copy of our newspaper. It's called What Is. You can write Reincarnationist, Box 3009, Agora Hills, California, 91301. And thank you for listening.